Google was ruled as a monopoly for its search practices on Android. So the DOJ wants to take away Google Chrome. Someone needs to tell someone over there that a web browser is not a search engine. But let's go ahead and discuss. Thanks for checking out this video by switchedtolinux. We cover various topics related to technology and privacy and Linux and why you should switch and free and open source software. Well, today we do want to discuss the DOJ and Google Chrome situation a little bit. If you like this type of content, subscribe to the channel. If you've not already done so, leave us a like and a comment down below. So let's go ahead and dive right on into this bad boy, the Department of Justice versus Google Chrome. So as I had mentioned in the intro there, the Department of Justice has effectively their recommendation. I don't think it's official yet, but the current prevailing recommendation is that Google get rid of Google Chrome because of the monopoly they have over search. I find this very fascinating, being as that Google Chrome is not a search engine. Google Chrome is a web browser. Now, I am not a Google Chrome user. I think that too many people use Google Chrome. I think that we should prioritize other browsers. Unfortunately, I've also said many times and stick to it, finding a web browser is like voting for a president. There just aren't any real good options. We have Firefox, and they're going crazy, and 85% funded by Google. We have Google Chrome, and they are run by Google. We have Microsoft Edge, which is a Chrome-based browser. We have Brave, which is a Chrome-based browser. We have Vivaldi, which is a Chrome-based browser. Do I need to go on? We do have things like LibreWolf, and we have Mullvad. Both of these are good privacy-focused browsers, although while I use them regularly, I do not use them as part of my day-to-day because there are times they are too restrictive, which is exactly what I want in some circumstances, but not for every single day web browsing. Now, in light of all of this, while I can see some of the argument being made for getting rid of Google Chrome, I don't think that this has anything to do with the monopoly, which mostly had to do with Google being a monopoly on search on Android. Google Chrome has nothing to do with any of that. Now, there were some very good points about this principle from Mental Outlaw's video. If you've not watched his video, he had some really good points. Primarily, I think that I agree with his point. Of course, Google has been removing Manifest v2, mostly in the open source Chromium code, which we'll get to a little bit more in a bit. But it has been removing that which breaks modern or a lot of your really good ad blockers. While there are ad blockers that work under Manifest v3, they're not as good. They are much more limited. And so in this instance here, what he argued is that removing Google Chrome from Google might restore Manifest v2 into the Chromium base, allowing the old ad blockers to continue to work. That is actually a decent one. He also mentions, however, that there's very few companies that if they have to sell this off could buy it. Meta, Microsoft, Elon Musk, Amazon, or Apple. That's about the short list of anybody who could afford Google Chrome. The only one of those that I would not be like, ick, would be Elon Musk. And of course, half of the world would go, ick, Elon Musk, And the reason I say that isn't because I agree with him politically. If you follow this channel a long time, I have been highly critical of Elon Musk over a lot of things, and I stand by that. I think the principle here is that Musk has actually demonstrated himself to be committed to Section 230 and free speech and user freedom with platforms for whatever that's worth. And that's exactly what I want a web browser to be. Amazon, they're going to find a way to abuse the system into their platform. Apple, I don't see that they would really want to buy it because they kind of already have a monopoly over the Apple ecosystem with their Safari browsers anyway. Microsoft and Meta are they're just as bad as Google in respect of all these, only I think Google probably would do a better job than either of these two at maintaining the core base of the open source code. So those were some of the principles that he had mentioned. Now, he said that the best ethically would be the Linux Foundation, even though the Linux Foundation is marred by a lot of control and funding from Microsoft. But nevertheless, the Linux Foundation might be one of the best to maintain not Google Chrome, but the Chromium code base. So Google Chrome should be able to keep Chrome, like Google, excuse me, should be able to keep Google Chrome. But the Chromium base, which is the base by which Google Chrome is made, probably should trade hands into a more dedicated free and open source organization, like the Linux Foundation or something like that. I generally agree with that principle that Mental Outlaw had made in his video. All that being said, I do want to go ahead and discuss a little bit more, a few more points being made here. So, of course, first and foremost, we had from the Guardian article here, U.S. Justice Department plans to push Google to sell off the Chrome browser. Again, the Chrome browser does not have anything to do with the actual ruling of this case, which was search on Android, which has a very simple solution. We will get to those solutions in a moment. The idea here is that Google Chrome is the most highly used web browser, and Google Chrome uses Google by default, and therefore we should get rid of it. This is an absolutely nonsense article. First and foremost, most computers do not have Google Chrome installed by default. Apple, I don't believe, does. That has Safari. Microsoft, Windows has Edge. Linux generally has Firefox. There are a few that have Google Chrome or Chromium, things like that. But the point here is that Google Chrome has a high market share because people intentionally install it. In fact, it's one of the few applications people intentionally install, for better or for worse. You say, well, Google is the default search, as it is with Firefox and Safari. And so all of the web browsers by default have that. Microsoft doesn't, just because they have Bing, and your privacy ones go, I don't want the Google. And so they actually go with usually DuckDuckGo. In the case of LibreWolf, and I can't remember what Mullvad browser is using. But the point is that if Google releases Google Chrome and Google Search is the default search engine, so what? That is the default on every major browser except for Bing being the default in Edge. But all of these browsers, it is not a difficult matter to change that. I would propose possibly this. Perhaps, and we'll get into this a little bit more later, perhaps if they really want to do something good about the actual merits of the case, which is the search monopoly, maybe require web browsers to offer a variety of searches on their install. The problem is, of course, this kills Firefox because 85% of Mozilla's funding comes from Google for making Google the default search engine on the Firefox web browser. But I don't care. Keep paying them. It's the first thing I ever do whenever I'm using Firefox on a long-term on a machine is I change the search engine anyway. So what does it matter? Now, with this being said, of course, this is kind of the whole factor. They're talking about Google controls 90%. Mostly of the search market is what they're saying. Mostly, though, they are having an issue here with the search and Android. Neither of these is relevant specifically to Google Chrome. So here is from Tech Radar. Yes, Google is a near monopoly. Selling off Chrome won't make it any better. I agree. Selling off Google Chrome will not cause any problem. And I think a lot of the challenge here is that a lot of people don't understand where these programs come from. So to understand, Google Chrome itself is just a proprietary version of the Chromium project. So Chromium is an open source software which anybody can see, view, fork, compile code. It is also cross-platform, Windows. You have Windows, you have Mac, you have Linux, you have Android, you can do BSD as well. And the point here is that it is an open source project that anybody can see and manipulate and change the code. Now, there are some connections into Google embedded in this code, but none of those are things that even have to be there. There is a project called Ungoogled Chromium, which again, you can download and you can install it on your Windows, on your Mac, on your Linux machine. And this is Chromium without any connections to Google Chrome at all, or to Google itself. So it hardens it by removing all aspects and all dependencies of Google. Whereas Chromium, while it is an open source connection and open source software, there are connections into Google. But to make Google Chrome, they take the Chromium project and they fix a few things that are proprietary that we can't see the code for, and they release that as Google Chrome. So the core of this is actually the Chromium code. Whoever controls the Chromium code. So if you want to get rid of the Chromium code and force an organization like the Linux Foundation to be the curator of that, that might actually be a best solution, because then Google does not decide what gets inside of there. The Google Chromium, or the Chromium package base can be its own separate thing. And then Google can keep making Google Chrome. They just have to take Chromium and probably make a few more changes and adjustments that they want, which is exactly what they're doing anyway. But this doesn't have anything to do with search, because I can still easily change my search engine. So selling this off is pretty much stupid. There's really not a purpose in doing this. So I did want to address, however, better solutions. If the DOJ really wanted to get rid of this search monopoly, there are better solutions. Number one, since this ruling about this court case had to do with search on Android, do what the EU has done successfully for a few years, and every time an Android system boots up, the user chooses their search engine. This way, and the way EU is doing it, if I remember correctly, it is a randomly curated list, which includes Google. It also includes DuckDuckGo, and it includes some browser or some search engine that's just local to their region. And they can look at all of these options and make the decision. If people know what a search engine is and they really like Google, they're still going to pick Google. For the same reason, nearly every computer, people have to install Google Chrome, because the only system which defaults to Google Chrome is Chromium. It's the Chrome OS. Excuse me. There's a Chromium OS and a Chrome OS as well. There's all these words in here. Apologies. I'm trying to catch myself if I slip up on these. So the Chromebooks, which is the Chrome OS, those are the only ones that have Chrome installed by default. Microsoft Windows, Apple, Linux systems, by and large, do not have Google installed. If it's the most used browser, people are intentionally installing it. In fact, they're even installing Google Chrome despite Microsoft's best efforts to get people to stop installing Google Chrome, which they have attempted to do. And so the default, if Google really is what people want to use, they will select it from the list of search engines. They might select it because they think it's the best. They might select it because it's the most available. It's it means the search engine in the zeitgeist. They may not understand what Ecosia is. They may not like the results of DuckDuckGo. If you make them have the option on install or first setup, really, that solves the problem. And it's way better solution than selling off Google Chrome. Number two, do the same thing for desktop browsers. When I install a browser, maybe one of those first things, I know Mozilla has a screen where you can start in when you first install Firefox. Do you want us to store all of your data? Actually, they took that screen away. They do that by default now. Yeah, Firefox is not as private as they claim to be. But you start it up, and would you like to import your bookmarks? Would you like to make this the default search engine? Very simple. On another screen, what would you like your default search to be? And have a list of search engines. Easy solution. You don't have to force the trading or the changing of software. Just do that. Number three, this is the best solution as, again, pertains to the last suit, which, again, was Android on and search on Android. I think that, by and large, We should have laws requiring all manufacturers to selling devices in this country to be unlocked. There is no earthly reason I should pay $1,000 for a phone and not be able to install my own software on it. All right, that should not be a thing. Now, I am not saying it should be simple. I am not saying it should be so easy I accidentally overwrite my software with something that doesn't work. Every device, though, a person buys in this country should be allowed to be unlocked to install my own software on it. Now, am I okay if we have a caveat to the law that you have to own the device? Absolutely. If you're going into Verizon and you're dropping $60 a month on a brand new iPhone because you can't control yourself and you're still making payments on this device, you should not be allowed to unlock that or change that. Same thing if you buy the latest Samsung flagship phone at $1,000, you should not be allowed to change that because you technically do not own that product. But if I've gone into that store and I said, here's my $1,000, hand me my phone, I should have a way to unlock that device. Here is why I say this and why this is relevant to this particular circumstance. When I install Chromium, when I install Graphene or I install Lineage, my default are not Google. My default is not the Google search. I have more choices in there. I have the ability to choose my system, and I have the ability to harden that any way I choose. If I want to be some smut lord and have the latest connections to the website with PH and look at all that kind of stuff day in, day out, that should be my right should I choose to do so. I'm not that person, but I am not going to take away your right to do that. However, if I want to say I want to buy a phone for my child, I should have every ability to manipulate the software on this phone to block PH and all other related sites from this device before handing this to the child. And right now, there is not a way to do that that works universally, that is easy to get around. Everything is all app-based. I want something on the operating system level. There you go. So that's really the premise that I want to go with here is that number one solution, require Android users to select the preferred search tool. Number two, do the same for desktop browsers. Number three, require device manufacturers to allow device unlocking so that we can take full control over our devices. Those are way better solutions than this ignorant idea of taking Google Chrome away from Google. It just doesn't make any sense. Those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts about these in the comments down below. Once again, if you like this channel and you would like, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Leave us likes, leave us some comments, and I will go ahead. I mentioned Graphene OS. It's pretty cool. I'll go ahead and leave you with a video about Graphene OS so you can watch that after this video. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.